Stan Smith is perfection.
Stan's shoes set a standard. It's just effortless, timeless.
You could hear Jay-Z quoting that he's wearing Stan Smith.
I think every community embraced that shoe. Hustlers, drug dealers.
Wearing a Stan Smith was aspirational.
No one really knows when it began. It feels like it's always been around.
People only know Stan Smith as a sneaker.
Who's Stan Smith?
Who is Stan Smith? Who the hell is Stan Smith?
Stan is one of the great icons in history. He held tennis on his shoulders for decades.
He was a power player.
He seemed like he was 7 feet tall. Girls were like falling over him. He has lived an extraordinary life.
He had been in some areas that were dangerous.
Stan Smith literally saved my life.
Boycotting Wimbledon was the greatest thing any player's ever done for the sport.
He sacrificed. That's who he is. On November 23rd, 1974, Margie and Stan got married.
You couldn't pick anybody better.
Without her, it would have been really difficult.
It's hard to think of him as an icon when he's worn the same mustache for 50 years.
He's a bigger deal now than he was when he won Wimbledon.
Jordan doesn't have his face on a sneaker.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cherry the Geek TV. I'm Joe Vanourney. Who is Stan Smith? Is a remarkable new documentary opening in select theaters around the country this May. The film highlights Stan Smith's tennis accomplishments, the creation and cultural impact of the Stan Smith Adidas sneakers, and it covers his humanitarian feats off the tennis court. Today, we are joined by the film's director, Danny Lee, and we get to find out who is Stan Smith because we're joined by the man himself, Stan Smith. Danny, Stan, welcome to Cherry the Geek TV.
Thank you very much.
Danny, we'll start with you. Talk about the genesis of this film. Where did the idea come from, and when and how did you get involved?
Yeah. First of all, nice to meet you. I love your voice. The genesis of the project, first of all, like Stan is one of those living legends that are rare that, the story is still available to tell. He had recently put out a book called Some People Think I'm a Shoe with Rizzoli. I think that was in 2018. And, and I think LeBron James's company, Spring Hill, had stumbled upon the book, thought this would be a great film. They reached out to a bunch of filmmakers. I was one of them, and I was fortunate enough to meet Stan and get the job. And it was, I guess, I had this specific vision of unpacking the mythology around Stan Smith. Who is that? Who is Stan Smith? What's behind the shoe and all of that? So it was an adventure for me to go deep into the wormhole of history, of tennis culture, of sneaker culture to tell this story.
How familiar were you with Stan before you took the project, and after meeting him and getting to know him, was there anything about him that surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, like most people, I had a sort of foundational knowledge of who Stan was, right? I knew that the sneaker has been around forever and the silhouette has barely changed over time. I knew that he was a tennis champion, but I didn't know to the depths of what he did for tennis and people in general. I didn't know that he was a fundamental piece of unionizing tennis when, the federations had all the power. I didn't know that he was the Wimbledon champion in 72, and then the next year turns around and boycotts it for his fellow players. I didn't know all these gutsy moves where he had essentially put the people before himself in so many ways. So when I entered this project thinking we're going to tell the story of an icon, but I didn't realize that we would reveal the power of our common humanity. And I think that's what we're hoping people walk away with the film, where they understand the power of doing right and doing good.
Now, Stan, you've been in the public eye for a little over 50 years, right? Have you ever been approached before by someone who wants to tell your story on film? And if not, what was it about Danny and his team that made you say, this is the guy and this is the time to tell my story?
Well, I've been approached actually a couple of times, but I wasn't necessarily too excited about it. But the Spring Hill really, they were excited about it, and then they got Danny, and I got to know Danny, and it became a fun project. I was a little bit, you know, leery about doing a doc, but you know, it was fun to see Danny in operation and to you know, to be part of what they did, and it's again, it's still kind of awkward to have a documentary done about you. So I
Now,
was pleased.
one of the storylines in the film deals with your friendship with Arthur Ashe. You and Arthur met as young men. You were on a team together in the mid to late 60s, traveling around the world. Talk about your friendship with Arthur Ashe and your relationship and what he meant to you and your life.
Yeah, Arthur is 4 years older than I, and he, I saw him play some college matches he played. He played for this school called UCLA, which, you know, some people make mistakes. But anyway, as a junior, I was just a novice, more or less, and watching him play, and that was fun to do that. But then I went to college, and then as soon as I graduated, I was able to be selected on the Davis Cup team with Arthur, and Bob Lutz and I were really selected to play doubles, and Arthur was playing singles, and then we got to know each other. In '68, we traveled all over the world together, '68 and '69. So it was. And then we formed a company together. Donald Dell was the captain, you know, started a law practice, and Arthur and I were his first clients, and we went on to form a little company for investments and things. And so we really spent a lot of time together, he and his wife and my wife and their daughter and our daughter, one of our daughters about the same age. And so we spent a lot of time together playing against each other as well as playing with each other in a Davis Cup situation. So you know, I always thought he was a great player, but he was even a better human being. And so I learned a lot from him, just from observing and from, you know, talking and seeing how he was handling the situation, which was in many cases where it was really not very fair.
I want to ask you about that. So you go around the world with him. You get to experience firsthand. You grew up in Southern California. You're going in the South now, playing tournaments in the South, and you get to witness firsthand how he is treated. This is at the height of the civil rights movement in like 1968 era, and you get to also go to like places like Vietnam and see the war firsthand. Did these getting to go around the world and experiencing this darkness affect you? Do you think that affected the man that you became, or do you think you're a man at heart and that you would have still been who you are? It maybe just taken a little longer to get there.
Who knows that I would have been the way I am, but I was definitely affected by what I saw, you know, the civil rights movement, the war in Vietnam, the assassination of Kennedy. It was really at the same time the transition of tennis becoming open from '68. All of a sudden, it became from amateur tennis, from my point of view, to professional tennis. And it all happened kind of during the period of time. And so, you know, I learned a lot in high school. I learned a lot in college, but, you know, nothing compared to what I learned the next, you know, 10 years on the tour of what life was like for people around the world.
Now, Danny, let's talk about Stan's wife, Margie. As amazing as Stan is, Margie, I think, is just equally amazing. She's a central figure in the film. Talk about her and why, you know, can you make a movie about Stan Smith without having Margie as a central focus as well?
Probably not.
I mean, theoretically, you could have made this movie in so many different ways, right? But I think it goes back to our first meeting, which I remember meeting Stan and Margie was in the meeting. And midway, as we're talking about everything, she's like, and she's got such this vibrant energy, right? And she goes, wait, we have all these like film reels upstairs that we've never developed. I'm like my head exploded in the meeting, and she ran up, came back down with these undeveloped film reels. And as a filmmaker, you're like, that is gold. Like she said, these were undeveloped film reels at the very like peak of Stan's rise, like during the late 60s to the mid 70s. And so right then I understood, one, she's gonna be an important ally in this production, because she's preserving everything and cataloging it all, including all of those scrapbooks and photos and everything, right? I mean, we had sort of an archival producer already working on everything, which is great. But secondly, as we got into it, it became super clear that what a wonderful person Margie is, and how much love there was between these two. I mean, they've got a marriage that's going on 50 years this year. Who else can say that? And so it became really abundantly clear in the process of making this that Margie not only had to play a big part in this, but that love story was definitely the C story in all of it. You got the tennis, you got the sneaker, but then you got this beautiful love story. And yeah, so in my version of this, you could never tell the story without her in it, and her playing a prominent part.
Now, Stan, in the film, you talk about this this list of goals that you made when you were a young man, right? You wrote out 4 goals. Number 1, to win the Davis Cup. Number 2, to be the number 1 player in the U.S. Number 3, to win Wimbledon, and number 4, to be the number 1 tennis player in the world. You accomplished all of those goals. I don't know if you ran out of paper, because I didn't see number 5, but the number 5 goal apparently was become a fashion icon. Talk about this, these sneakers, the Stan Smith sneakers from Adidas. What is it about these sneakers that had such an impact on culture for decades?
Well, those first 4 goals really required a lot of practice and work. And then there was the 5th point was ... And so that was the rest of my life, I guess. But the shoe was, the right, being in the right place at the right time with the right product, with the right company. And they wanted to expand their horizon into the United States. And so they're looking for an American to be involved. And so they're also looking for a really good looking, guy, and they couldn't find one. So they ended up with me to put on the tongue of the shoe. And that was a little over 50 years ago. And, the shoe has been, it was actually a high-tech tennis shoe, performance shoe at the time. And before that, we wore canvas. And so it wasn't, this shoe was really a big step up. And now, of course, there's a lot more bells and whistles on the really most current shoes, the Barricade, particularly for the Adidas. But anyway, it's now a fashion shoe, and it's just a comfortable shoe to wear. And it's always been comfortable. It's always been simple. It's always been, clean, and it goes with everything. And men and women can wear it. And I've seen presidents and presidents' wives and celebrities and wealthy people and poor people and hip hop and preppy. And it's kind of it's good for anybody. And that's a little bit about my philosophy in life, is that everyone is really the same, in mostly. And there's different cultures and different backgrounds and everything with everybody, but everyone's really kind of the same. And hopefully, I was hoping that shoe might be a bonding factor for the world.
Danny, did you want to add anything? I know you've made previous films about shoes. What's your take on why these sneakers have lasted so long?
Yeah,
such an impact.
Well, I think it all, one, I think from an aesthetic point of view, it's such a clean, elegant shoe that, it's at a price point in which I think anyone can afford it and feel that there's a sense of prestige. Like it's almost like you're walking on a tennis court. You might be walking on Wimbledon, but it's so clean. You can rock it with jeans, shorts, or a tuxedo. So I think from an aesthetic point of view and functionality, that's why. But there's, whether it's a shoe, a jacket, a hat, any inanimate object, there's always sort of, there's the ones that endure, they have a story attached to it, right? And I think that's why this endures, because this is a timeless story. There's, hopefully the film answers those many questions. I mean, the fact that, 2 years after the shoe, actually Stan took over the shoe, but basically, Stan won Wimbledon in these shoes. He boycotted Wimbledon and helped unionize tennis in these shoes. There are a lot of experiences that are imbued in the shoes. So I think from an intangible perspective, there's so much history in it. And so you're walking around with all this history. And I think that's why it endures. And that's why it's important.
Well, we are sadly almost out of time. I'm going to wrap it up with this question to Stan. We talked about, Danny's the one that made this documentary. Now that you've seen the final product, are you happy? Are you satisfied? Is this the official film documents of Stan Smith?
Well, there's always elements that you'd like to see different. And like Danny was saying, I was actually sick. I could barely talk in this long interview that we did at the very end of this production. And so I regret that a little bit. But, overall, he did a heck of a job, getting everything into that film. And again, it's pretty hard for someone to really give an opinion about something that's so close to it's my life.
Well, it's a wonderful film. I watched it this morning. It gives you all the emotions. It's a feel-good movie. I highly recommend it. Seek this one out, folks. The film's called Who is Stan Smith? It opens in select theaters around the country this May. Danny and Stan, thank you so much for chatting with us today on Cherry the Geek TV.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate your time.